So we are very fortunate to be talking to Rosin. How do I best pronounce your last name now?
It's Lenoir, so it's French.
Lenoir.
Yes,
A
yes, and it
great
used to
name.
be Miller. Thank you, back in the
Right.
day. So, yeah.
Tell us about your school history and when you were at Crossroads.
Okay, so let's see. Starting at the very beginning. So at the
Mm,
very beginning,
mm,
I went to the same elementary school. So I was in Hazelwood School District. I went to
Okay.
Granneman Elementary.
Okay.
I left Granneman in sixth grade, came to Crossroads for seventh and eighth, left Crossroads really close to the end of my eighth grade year. I probably spent a month or two back in Hazelwood School District. From there, I went to Incarnate Word. From there, I went to SLU. From there, I went to WashU, and that's the end of my St. Louis educational journey.
That's awesome. And so we're going to get to how you're in Phoenix now.
Yes.
Right. But how did Crossroads, how was it perhaps different from the other schools you went to?
Oh my gosh. So the interesting thing is at that age I didn't know anything about Crossroads. I just knew that it was way across town. I lived in North County, and it was a city school. So I knew really nothing about it except that my mother said, I found you a new school and that's where you're going to go. I went to visit. It was back in those days. I remember sitting in the what we call the cafeteria, which
Right.
was the counter. It kind of was like the old school Walgreens counter restaurant.
Exactly.
And I was kind of like, I don't know about this, but it seems cool. And I will tell you that whenever I talk about my educational career, one of the favorite places that I've ever gone has been Crossroads. I've had friends of friends who have asked about, where should I send my kid to high school? And Crossroads was on the list. And I was like, hands down, it is definitely
Well,
Crossroads.
that's
Yeah.
fantastic to hear. Are
Yeah.
there any teachers that you remember in particular?
Any teachers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember Anita. I
Oh, great.
remember going to Anita's house for a barbecue. I remember Richard.
Mhm.
I remember, I think we had an English teacher named Cal.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember, and it's interesting, I remember a lot of faces. Names, it's been some years, so the names may or may not I may not remember, but I remember the interesting thing of being able to call the teachers by their first names.
Right.
We always thought that was weird, but I will tell you, it just made it more intimate and more there was more of a connection. I also remember Carol.
Okay, good.
And oddly enough, Carol followed me to WashU. I always used to tease her because I was in their early childhood program and she was one of my professors. So when she walked in, I was like, I know you. I remember you from Crossroads. And so that was kind of nice to see, the transition full circle around there too.
That is most interesting, yeah.
Yes.
And Cal is really an interesting person, and he himself was a journalist. He interviewed Nelson Mandela,
Oh,
a
nice.
number of other people, and
Hmm.
um, he's also kind of a stand-up storyteller slash comedian. He's
Really?
somebody
I
I
could
would
see that.
love to have come back to Crossroads for the reunion we're having in September.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I'm going to ask a favor of you. If he's
Yes.
blind afterwards, I'll give
Hmm.
you his contact information. I did the same with Tracy.
Okay.
And if you wanted to reach out to him, whether or not you can make the reunion, it'd be great if you can. But if not, maybe, we can do part of it by Zoom and
Right. Yeah.
let him know you remember him as a teacher and you'd love to see him again.
Oh, awesome.
Because
I will
I'd love to
certainly do
get him.
that.
Yeah.
I would certainly do that. There's so many just experiences and, that just I can't say enough great things about Crossroads. I tell you, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, and we appreciate that. And I don't want this to be, a walking commercial for
No, I mean, I've got a laundry, like I could probably rattle them all off. It's so funny.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so
Yeah,
you went to St. Louis U,
I
uh,
did. Mhm.
and then WashU. So it sounds like you have more than one degree, or
Yes, I do.
okay.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so at St. Louis University, I started off pre-med and then midway through decided that well, maybe working on dead bodies is not something that I'm interested in on that educational path. And so I switched over to psychology. So I majored in psychology and women's studies.
Ooh,
And toward the very end, so all my degree courses were completed. And then my senior year, I started sort of dabbling in the world of education and loved it so much that I decided to go on to get my master's. Wasn't sure what I was going, who or whom I was going to teach, but I ended up at WashU in their early childhood and elementary master's program. So I did my 2 years there. I worked at the WashU nursery school. You know, it's kind of funny. Everyone's like, "You went to WashU to be a teacher," and I was like, "I sure did."
yeah,
So that
that's
was
great.
my first sort of career stop. And then from there, I worked in U City or University City
Yeah,
at several schools there. I taught for 12 years. Had
that's
a
great.
kid.
Are you willing to say what schools in U City? Because
Oh,
it
for
may be
sure.
shout out the people who run there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I my first job was at Del Mar Harvard, which is no longer
Okay.
there, right next to the library.
Right.
And
Unfortunately.
then I worked at Pershing. And then
Okay.
I was also at Barbara Jordan.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I was kind of all around a little bit. And then I did summer school at Jackson Park and Flynn Park.
See,
So
I knew
I
when
all of them but Hawthorne.
Flint Park is where I first went to school.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah,
I
kindergarten
love
through
Flynn.
fourth. Yeah, yeah, great. And I can tell you that when I was there in the 1950s, there were teachers there who were saying this building is too old. You know, it needs to be torn down and replaced. And here we are 75 years later and it's still there, but, apparently doing well.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. So
So after St. Louis, what came next?
let's see. So after teaching, I started working actually at WashU. I worked on the My Side program, which was a
Oh,
mobile classroom for to teach science inquiry to teachers and students. So I kind of helped writing the curriculum and teaching teachers how to teach science to their kids. I did that for a
okay.
couple years. And then the big transition. So it was a grant funded program. And I was kind of like, I don't know what to do in 3 years after that. So
That's tricky. Yeah.
I have a huge love for science and a huge love for kids. And so I sort of ixnayed the love for kids and went to become a pharmaceutical rep. So I, oddly enough, worked at several different pharmaceutical companies, and it's so funny when I do interviews, like job interviews, and they're like, well, how'd you go from teaching to pharmaceuticals? Well, the interesting thing is I went on a ride along with someone, and it clicked for me because I was like, I love teaching, I love educating adults, kids, it doesn't matter who it is. Science is my background, and I'm good at taking information, changing it around, regurgitating it back to someone. And so if someone had told me, 10 years prior or even 15 years prior, I was going to be in sales, I would have said, there's no way. Because back then, all I think of was Xerox copy machines and insurance and vacuum cleaners. And I was like, that is not me. But I will tell you, I have sold in the pharmaceutical arena. I've also worked in higher ed. So for some of the online universities. And my current position, I work for the AAMC, so American Association of Medical Colleges. And I'm the Senior Account Relationship Manager Specialist. So I work with specialty medical organizations as well as hospitals and universities that have medical schools.
That is really interesting. And you don't have to deal with the dead bodies, right?
I do not at all. I get to just talk to the people that have done it. So yeah, it's very interesting, and it's an interesting transition how I got from one place to the other.
Yeah. I just heard yesterday about a specialty I'd never heard of before. It was a person who was a pediatric pharmacist. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, yes, yes.
Okay.
So
And then what is
probably
there?
their
A
specialty,
gerontological pharmacist or what?
yeah, so it's probably their specialty is dealing with medications for children.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
I
And
didn't
there's
know
a
it.
over 100, and I think it's 150, do not quote me on that, at least medical specialties. So there's a lot. lots and lots. There's like nuclear medicine. There's just a
Right.
bunch of different things. Yeah.
So I'd like to hear more because part of what we're doing here is not just what happened at Crossroads, but what people are doing and what commitments they have.
Right.
And so you decided you wanted to go to Africa. And can you
Yes.
tell us what it was that you wanted to see and did it meet your expectations?
Okay, so and I was sharing with you that this is my background. I went to Ghana last year for my birthday. I decided that once I hit 50, that every single year after that, I was going to do something big for my birthday.
Good.
Making the decision to go to Ghana, I did the 23andMe, and part of my DNA makeup, close to the top was Ghana.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? I've never been. I heard it's pretty easy to maneuver and get around. And so, yeah, I decided to book a trip. And I had a friend of a friend that I met at SLU who gave me the recommendation of someone who became my tour guide. And I went all over Ghana. So that is kind of how I ended up there. It was absolutely amazing. And I want to go back. I even
Well,
thought
I
about
saw
moving.
on your Facebook page that you had been at a locale where slaves were being sold.
Yes.
What
Yes.
what was that like?
So, I will tell you, there's nothing that can prepare you. I've had many history lessons. I've taught many history lessons, seen documentaries, things like that. But to actually walk in, you see them from the outside, I guess, and you walk in and you're like, oh, wow, this is big, this is interesting. But then you start to hear the stories, and you start to see the scratches on the wall, and you start to see, the conditions. And we would walk into a space and they would explain that, right now there's 15 of us on a tour, but there were like 500 people in the room, and you just cannot wrap your head around it. There were instances where I was able to see what they call the door of the last, the door of the last wait, oh wait, last return, the door of the last return, I think is what it's
Mm.
called. The So basically, I don't think I'm saying that right, but it's the door of the final return. There is no return. Final door.
Mm.
Sorry. So it's basically
Yeah.
the space that they walk out of and never come back. The door of no return. That's what it is. I'm like,
Door
there's
of no
something about a
return,
return.
right.
So the door of no return. So basically, slaves were held within the compound, and they were led out this particular door, and from there they went straight to the ships with no intent on returning back.
And did they
And
know where they were going?
no, no. And the interesting thing, you can see out the window and you see the beach. And I'm assuming that what they saw was like a beach, some boats, and they probably assumed that that is what was going to happen. And, there's a couple things that, so that was very powerful for me. The other that really got me was I went to visit another slave quarter where we kind of did a tour, and it's pretty much the same thing. Things are underground, it's very tight spaces, hard to breathe, it's hot as the Dickens in Africa. And just to imagine being in there, I know what it's like. I'm here in Arizona. I know what it's like for it to be 85 degrees in my place. So I can't even imagine the temperatures being that high. But one of the things that our tour guide pointed out is there's a pond that was built kind of in a weird space. And he said that the reason the pond was built there, it was built right over the basically where the slaves were being held,
Oh,
because the slave owners did not want to hear their screams. So
oh
they
my God.
put the that just kind of, I kind of lost it, but they put the pond on top of there so that the water could drown out some of the screams of the people. And that just sort of, yeah, that one kind of did something to me. And then the final is that we did the slaves' final bath. So we went to an area where slaves are brought in, they kind of walk through the woods a little bit, and they go down this hill into the river. They take a bath, they kind of do a loop, they come back out, and that's where they're sold. And interestingly enough, there were people, not sure, I don't know if they were from a nearby village or what have you, but they were utilizing the river as we were there. So you see them with the thing, they're carrying things on their head. They're walking by, they're holding each other, walking across the water. And I was like, oh, wow. And then the final thing for me was, I just had this thing in me to want to touch the water. And so of course I had on sandals and I went and I just touched the water and I put my hand in the water and there was this weird electric shock.
Ooh,
I pulled my hand out, I jumped and I looked at the tour guide and he just sort of smiled and he said, not everybody can feel that.
wow.
And I was just like, wow. And I actually have video of myself touching the water and it was just like the feeling, like you could just feel it. And it was probably one of the most powerful things that has ever happened to me.
I don't know how you'd feel about this, but if you'd want to share that video, we could include it in this
Yeah,
interview.
sure, sure. I'll send it to
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Wow. So, at Crossroads, one of the things that was important to us was students growing up, becoming active citizens, caring about, what we might call the common good of their local community, the country, the world.
Yes.
Um, I'm just curious whether or not kind of how you view your role as a very educated citizen. Biggest issues you see in the country, in the world, and any thoughts on how to address them. It's a very broad question, but
Ooh, it is a very broad question. So I will say that from um and it goes back to my high school career at Incarnate because one of the things that was instilled was, well, and actually I'll start with Crossroads because I was able to really work with people from different places. I was a county girl. I grew up in the county all my life. Like I said, I'm sort of a county country girl coming to the city. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so one of the things that just being at Crossroads taught me is the importance of diversity and the importance of really, and I'm going to say it, loving your neighbor and getting to know people. And, it's funny. My friends always say that I'm sort of the connector. I like to connect people. I'm like, oh, this person, I know someone that can help you do that. And so just through my education, like at Incarnate, we had to do, like volunteer opportunities at hospitals and just everywhere. I was on like oh my gosh, it was the community life. I think it was called the CLC, Community Life Christian something or other. And we would go out and just help others. And I think that when I look back, I'm all about volunteering. I have two boys. I'm all about making sure that they are making a space in the world for not only themselves, but also for others and to sort of treat others the way that they would want to be treated. And I tell you, I think that's really what we're missing is the just to understand that people are different, and even though they may not have the same views as you, whatever their differences are, is that we're all the same. And so it is disheartening. I mean, just everything that's going on in the world right now. It's just like it makes you want to grab your kids, hug them closer, and get on a plane and go to a place like Ghana. I tell you, it is just, where you're seen, you're heard, and you don't feel as though everyone is against you or the world is against you.
yeah.
So
So you have two sons.
I have two boys, yes.
And where are they? How old are they?
One is 21 and currently he is working on a cruise ship.
Wow.
So he is out exploring the world. He
Oop, Raza, I lost you.
Uh-oh.
Okay, now we're back. Okay.
Okay. Yes. So it might be hopefully we're still there. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a class of 2020. So I'll start over. So he's 21 years old. That's my youngest. And
Okay.
he is on the cruise ship, kind of working and exploring the world. And he's a class of 2020. And so he did start off in school, but just he's got the travel bug like his mom. And so
Great.
he's out and about exploring. I have a 25-year-old who graduated from Maryville. So both of them went to MICDS. And
Oh,
now
really?
my 25-year-old is he's got his college degree in cybersecurity, and he
Wow.
is back. He went to Canada for a year, sort of a gap year, and now he's just gotten back, trying to get his footing back. and he wants to go to Japan to teach English next year. So I'm not
Interesting.
sure quite how I feel about that, having both my boys all over the world, but I fully take some of the blame for that, that travel
And
bug.
credit as
So
well.
yes, absolutely. And the credit, yes.
So when Crossroads started, there were three of us. Oop, now you're frozen. Okay, you're back.
Okay.
When Crossroads started, there were three male teachers, and all of us had gone to what then was Country Day, which became part of MICDS. I don't know if you can hear this because
Mhm. Am I
okay,
frozen?
frozen. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, you're
okay.
back.
All
We're good.
right.
But
Sorry.
anyway, so there is a
Yeah.
connection now. The connection from my perspective is that while we made great friends at Country Day and while we learned a lot, the pressure was really unhealthy for us, and it wasn't the kind of thing that we wanted to put on anybody else. So that was one of the strong commitments of Crossroads when we started was to try to minimize the pressure. But I,
Right.
I understand that more recently it's less so. So that's
Yeah, it is. They actually, both of them had a great experience. My oldest son, he's got a core group of kids. I think it's like maybe 10 or 12 of them. And they still are in contact probably almost every day.
that is
And
great. I feel very
yeah,
lucky that every 2 weeks I get together with four other high school friends.
right.
We're all like 77, but there's so much that ties us together. So the last thing I'd like to ask you kind of gets back to the citizenship and so forth.
Yes.
You live now in Arizona.
Right.
Arizona has become a very yeah, a political venue in the news. Um,
Yes.
how do you see that? Do you feel that there are more people like yourself who the sense of community and sharing and caring that somehow the some of the legislators and executives in Arizona uh, don't seem to fully represent people such as yourself.
Right. Interestingly enough, so I just moved out here 2 years ago. So
Ah,
I am a
okay,
newbie to Arizona. And it's interesting because I've had people say, "Oh my gosh, you're moving there." And I'm like, I live in Missouri. So one is not very much different from the other, I
right,
feel
right,
like. I kind of keep up with things, but I'll be very honest. It kind of goes in one ear and out the other because it's some of what you hear, is so disheartening. And I won't say I've become immune to it, but I'm kind of like, it's the way of the world right now. And I can
yeah,
only do my part and do what I can do. I will say that prior to moving here, I was a little nervous because of what I see on the news, what I hear on the news. And I was like, and it's a shame that, American flags and different things that symbolize our nation have become this like, oh my gosh, that house has a big American flag next to it. I don't know if I
right.
want to stay there. So, it's actually, it's kind of sad, but I have not had, knock on wood, any instances where I have felt threatened or I've felt that, oh my gosh, I can't go into this space. And it's very interesting because I sort of feel like, because St. Louis has their segregation pieces
Oh,
and parts as
absolutely, yeah,
well. And so, as someone growing up in St. Louis, there are certain parts that I know not to go to, and thought I pretty much instilled that in my kids. And I called them and they're like, "Oh, we're down here." And I was like, "Why? Who do you know down there? Why are you down there? What?" And so I have to realize that, and they don't see the same things that I do.
yeah.
And so coming to a new city, I feel like I don't know any better. So I kind of venture out because I love to hike. I love to go
Right.
on road trips and I go probably places I maybe should not, but I don't know. But I've never felt weird, like, oh, everybody's looking at me or why am I here? But I will say, as a person of color here, and it's interesting, I just talked to some friends about this, is that you can very much become invisible because you're not
Just
in the majority. So I can go out, and while I don't feel as though someone's looking at me like, why is she here? Who let the doors of Arizona open? I also feel like I can go shopping, and the only person that will say anything to me would be the person at the cashier.
Wow.
or so, and it's very interesting. And
Mhm.
I've heard similar stories to people that also people of color that live here as well. That is sort of a feeling of being invisible. However, I talk to everyone. And so it could just be me because a lot of people are like, oh, I go to the store all the time. Nobody talks to me. And I'm like, in St. Louis, I go to the store and I am talking to anyone who, who will listen. And so I don't know if it's the culture or I don't know
Yeah,
what, it's really interesting.
it may be that, in St. Louis, that we have this notion, I like to believe, that we're friendlier than in other places. And it may be that, or it may be something with less stereotypical and would
Right.
require some more diving.
Well, and I tell you, the interesting thing is the people that I've met here, that I'm really good friends with, they're all from the Midwest. So I am convinced that Midwesterners are a lot more friendly. And it's really interesting though when I meet someone and we start chatting or whatever, and I'm like, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm from Chicago, I'm from Ohio, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm like,
That's great
I
to hear.
just think it's the Midwest.
I
We've
love it.
just, yes. So
So,
I
Roz,
think that's
before
what
we
it is.
go, is there
Yes.
anything else that you would like to say?
Oh my gosh. I will just say that when I think about Crossroads, because I do know it is the big anniversary is coming up, and kudos to you all for starting the school because it is absolutely amazing. And like I said, my son has a couple of friends who graduated from there,
Oh, good.
and I just cannot say enough about it. I think about our camping trip that we went on. I think it was a seventh grade camping trip where I have met lifelong friends that are invaluable to me. There's some that I've reconnected with on Facebook. There's some who are, the godparent of my kids. And we just keep in touch. And there were just so many lessons learned at Crossroads for me, whether it's the freedom, the autonomy, the independence. It's the first time that my mom forced me to get on a bi-state bus. So I had to
Really?
ride the bi-state bus from the county to
Okay.
the city, and that sort of shaped, a lot of who I am. And I remember the discovering the city classes, and there are just so many invaluable experiences that I've had at Crossroads that I am 99.99% sure it has made me into the person that I am today.
That's
So if
really
I could leave
interesting
on
to
any
hear,
note, it
Roz.
would definitely be that. I just have such fond memories. And if you asked me some of my other schools, I can't remember a thing.
Well,
So
and I find it interesting. You're not the first person who I've uh, been talking to and who brings up the bi-state thing. That they,
yes,
it was an opportunity to do that, and they developed a lot more independent self-confidence, um,
absolutely.
and just
Absolutely.
becoming familiar with the city.